Jetzt habe ich einen weiteren Referenten, hochqualifiziert, sehr gut aussehend, kann ich jetzt schon sagen, wenn die Damen drüben jetzt gleich da stehen bzw. sitzen. Freut euch und ich bin sehr stolz, dass wir Dr. Bernhard Lingens da haben. It's your stage. Thank you for coming.
So, as Tino said already, I would like to talk about one of the worst buzzwords ever, ecosystems. And apparently ecosystems are everywhere. Insurance companies are building up the mobility ecosystem. Blockchain companies are integrating other firms into their blockchain ecosystem. And innovation hubs have a very powerful ecosystem as well. Ecosystems are everywhere, are they? Personally, I don't believe so. Because one of the key problems of this buzzword is that people are using the word ecosystem and they don't even know what they're talking about. And I would like to use this slide that you can see in here to disentangle the different concepts and the different buzzwords of ecosystems, which hopefully helps you to understand the concept behind the buzzword. And as you can see from the left to the right, many companies or many people are using the word industry ecosystem. It's just a buzzword. It means, yeah, our industry ecosystem or our ecosystem in Zurich, our startup ecosystem in Berlin. It's just another word for sometimes market segment, sometimes for the companies around you or the companies you're working with. Another concept that companies like to use is the knowledge ecosystem. Knowledge ecosystems are certainly not a novel concept. The main purpose is to exchange knowledge. We all know innovation hubs, we all know co-working spaces, we know industry clusters. The basic purpose is to exchange knowledge, usually among companies and universities, for instance. And as I said, it's nothing new. Same accounts for the platform ecosystem. We are surrounded by platform ecosystems. Amazon, WhatsApp, Facebook, dating platforms. The underlying logic is always the same. You create a virtual marketplace between offer and demand. And the underlying logic is always the so-called network effect. For instance, Amazon, the more traders you have on Amazon, the more attractive it is for the customers because they have more offer. The more attractive Amazon is for the customers, the more customers will be using Amazon. The more customers will be using Amazon, the more it becomes interesting for the traders. As you can see, a vicious cycle starts. And this vicious cycle has two key implications. First, in order for this vicious cycle to come true, you need to reach the so-called critical mass. If two people are using WhatsApp, it's not very attractive. If all of my friends are using WhatsApp, however, it becomes very attractive. In other words, there's this critical mass that you need to reach in order for the platform ecosystem to make sense, in order for the network effect to start. And the other implication is that once the network effect starts, platform ecosystems might even take over whole markets. We can see this with Amazon, for instance, the dominant player in online trading. WhatsApp, Facebook, dominant social media platforms or communication channels. It's not always the case, of course, but in many cases, platform ecosystems are growing that much that they are taking over whole industries or areas. But also not a novel concept. As I said, I think the iTunes Store goes back to 20 years ago. And it's also a concept, I believe, even though I'm not an expert in blockchain, but I believe it's a concept which is very relevant for the blockchain context, because companies are increasingly using blockchain as an underlying technology to scale ecosystems or platform ecosystems. And then there's the fourth concept, the innovation ecosystem. And this is a new concept which is increasingly coming up in industries. And I would like to do a deep dive in the following and briefly explain the concept of innovation ecosystems opposed to the other concepts shown on the slide. And I would like to do so by using an example of a real-life company, Duckadoo. Most likely many people don't know Duckadoo because it's usually being used as a white label solution. But the underlying idea of Duckadoo is to create a health insurance where the insurance fee is dependent on your health. So they developed a health score from 1 to 1,000. If you have 1,000, you're basically Adonis, almost a god. If you have 0, you're basically dead. And So this health score allows Dakadu to measure and to quantify your health. And now this can be used in order to create a health insurance where your fee is dependent on how healthy you are. Obviously, there are some moral problems with this, but I would like to focus not on these, but on the way how Dakadu implemented this very value proposition. And Dakadu is a big data company. They don't have much of a connection to insurance. So how did they manage to build up such a powerful value proposition in the field of insurance? They're doing so by using an innovation ecosystem. And this is what you can see here. So on the very left, you see the data analyst, Dakadu. They're creating this health score. They're able to measure and to estimate the health of the people being insured. In the middle, you have the health insurance. The health insurance is providing the insurance solution and also serves as a customer interface. But an insurance alone is not enough. You need a reinsurance as well, which is insuring the insurance company. And they also need to develop a tailor-made insurance solution for the health insurance company. And this, again, is still not enough because Dakadu cannot only calculate the health score based on the health data of the person being involved. They also need some metadata. So, for instance, demographic data, distribution of health, of public health, of age, gender, and so on. And all these inputs are necessary for this joint value proposition to come true. So here you can see the three key elements of an innovation ecosystem. An innovation ecosystem is always defined first based on the value proposition. What is the value proposition towards the customer you would like to offer? Second of all, you need partners providing modules to this joint value proposition, the insurance solution, the reinsurance solution, the metadata. And you need to align these partners providing the modules. And third, you need a so-called orchestrator, which is a company, or maybe even several companies, orchestrating and aligning these partners being involved in the ecosystem. There are three elements: joint value proposition, partners providing modules, and the orchestrator. But now you might wonder, why is that an ecosystem? What is the difference between an ecosystem and, for instance, a supply chain or a basic collaboration? What is very important here is to know that all these elements, all these modules of the joint value proposition, they didn't exist at the beginning of the ecosystem initiative. So when Dakadu started building up the ecosystem, they needed to approach the insurance companies and asking them, are you interested in committing to this ecosystem? Are you interested in developing a value or a health insurance where the fee is dependent on the health status of the person being insured? And then the answer might be, yes, of course. However, there's one problem. If we do develop our health insurance solution, and for instance, the reinsurance company is not willing to commit, or they're not developing their respective module, it's pointless. There won't be an effort, there won't be any revenues, there won't be any resulting revenues, because we know that we are equally dependent from the other partners. So please, before we step into the ecosystem, make sure that the other companies are doing so as well, and make sure that they are developing their respective contributions. So the data analyst, Dakadu, maybe is approaching the next company, the reinsurance company, asking them whether they are willing and able to commit to the ecosystem. The answer will be, again, of course, we would like to. It makes sense. The business case is very attractive. But please make sure that the other companies are committing first, because we don't want to take the risk. And this is what you can see, the two key challenges that you are confronted with when building up ecosystem. The first is the strong dependency among the partners. If one partner is failing or leaving the ecosystem, it will fail as a whole. And if you are developing your respective module, you're taking the risk of doing so. You're investing into it, and the other partners are not doing so. There won't be a joint value proposition, there won't be any revenues. So the strong dependency among the partners. And second of all, the orchestrator needs to coordinate the partners, which creates a huge coordination effort. And this is the second challenge that you're facing here. But of course, you're also doing it for a purpose. So what are the purposes of an innovation ecosystem? Again, there are two of them. First, an innovation ecosystem allows you to enter new markets that you could not reach in isolation. So for instance, Dakadu They have a very interesting technology. They have the health index. However, they are not an insurance company. But stepping into an ecosystem or building up an ecosystem, which also involves insurance companies, allows them to step into the insurance market and to disrupt the insurance market. And on the other hand, you can do so without building up all necessary resources and capabilities in-house. Let's take the example of the insurance company. Being involved in the ecosystem of Dakadu allows them to differentiate against their competition without creating a health index or creating the skills in terms of big data that you need for that. So, taken together, what is an innovation ecosystem? You have these three elements: the joint value proposition, partners providing modules which need to be aligned towards the joint value proposition, and an orchestrator ensuring that alignment. You have two key challenges: the effort of orchestration, the risk of dependency among the partners. But on the other hand, you also have two key advantages, two key opportunities. You can increase your revenues by stepping into novel industries, by creating a stronger differentiation against your competition. And of course, you can do so without building up all the necessary resources in-house. And that was just, in a nutshell, the idea of the innovation ecosystem. And you also see the key driver behind that is the question of whether the modules that you need for this joint value proposition do exist or not. If Dakadu tries to build up this innovation ecosystem and all modules exist already, there's an existing health insurance solution, there's an existing reinsurance solution for that, you basically have a supply chain setting. You just do a strict contract, some penalties in the contract, then you integrate the partners, less orchestration effort, and less dependency, because it's all based on a nice and strict contract. But the more these modules don't exist, the more you're dependent from your partners, the more orchestration effort involved. But of course, on the other hand, the higher also the potential benefits, because the higher also the differentiation potentials. And in the following, I would like to talk about some typical myths about ecosystems. Because if you talk with companies being interested in ecosystems, you typically hear these myths, and as I believe there are strong misunderstandings and misconceptions of the concept of ecosystems. And the first is that, as I said at the beginning, ecosystems are everywhere. So we all believe that we need an ecosystem. Some companies say, well, we must hire a head of ecosystems in order to build up ecosystems because we need ecosystems to differentiate. Of course, that's nonsense, because first of all, you don't need an ecosystem. What you need is you want to achieve an innovation, and then you need an innovation ecosystem. You would like to create a digital marketplace, maybe based on a blockchain or not, but you would like to create a digital marketplace, so build up a platform ecosystem. You want to exchange knowledge, build up a knowledge ecosystem. Or you just want to use a buzzword in order to sound cool, say ecosystem to everything you see. But these are very different concepts with very different underlying ideas. So for instance, the platform ecosystem, it's all about reaching the critical mass and scaling. The innovation ecosystem is all about creating an innovation that you couldn't achieve in isolation by involving just a few but very important partners. So completely different ideas. And the knowledge ecosystem is just about exchanging knowledge. And what you also see is that it's very difficult for companies to, for instance, build up a knowledge ecosystem, for instance, to be involved in an innovation hub or a cluster, and then create an innovation ecosystem with the partners being involved there. So it's even sometimes difficult to step from one concept to another. And the ideal partners for the knowledge ecosystem are not necessarily the best partners to create a joint innovation. And this is why we really need to understand what is our purpose, what would we like to achieve, which concept of ecosystem is the best for me, or maybe I don't even need an ecosystem, I just need a standard innovation or open innovation, or maybe just a supply chain. The second myth is that whenever you ask a corporate about their role in an ecosystem, about the role in a future ecosystem, they would say, well, of course, we are the orchestrator. What else? And then you ask them why, and the answer will be, yeah, we are the biggest company here, so of course we need to be the orchestrator. What we saw in industry, but also in research, is that it is very difficult for corporates to be the orchestrator of an innovation ecosystem. Because what makes a good innovation ecosystem orchestrator? There are basically two key elements. The first is that you need to be very fast. You need to have high pace of product development. For the very simple reasons that the partners involved, they are aware of their mutual dependency. They know that this is a very tricky setting in which you are dependent on your partners, of your ecosystem partners. So once you realize that there's no progress in this development, you might lose your faith in the ecosystem. So all the companies we are working with, they're usually saying, well, within 6 months you need at least an MVP or a first prototype to show to your partners that something is going on and that this setting, it's very risky, but we are making progress and we're getting there. And on the other hand, what you need is you need a certain flexibility and organizational flexibility. Imagine you're in an ecosystem and several big corporates are being involved. And all of them, they have their lengthy IP, legal, NDA, and so on, and budgeting processes. And you are having the same problems. In the end of the day, you will end up just spending more time on negotiating about contracts than actually building up the product and building up the ecosystem. A startup, however, or a small firm, they have higher flexibility. They have less restrictions in terms of legal, in terms of NDAs, in terms of IP, also in terms of their brand name. And this is why we see, while at a certain point in time, when you start building up the ecosystem operationally, a startup has the better structure. And even the corporates building up ecosystems, they tend to create kind of a startup structure once they start the operational business of the ecosystem. So corporates are not the natural orchestrators of an innovation ecosystem, but they need to find a structure, change their structure more towards a startup-like structure in order to do so. And then another myth is that ecosystems are huge and they dominate whole markets. We always believe, I think there was a study of a famous consulting company, they said in the future we only might have around 12 big ecosystems and they're dominating everything. There will be the ecosystem mobility, the ecosystem health, the ecosystem living, and that's it. And all companies need to be involved in ecosystems. And if you want to build up an ecosystem, think big. This is completely true for platform ecosystems, because as I said, there's a scaling logic behind. The idea of a platform ecosystem is to scale and to grow as much as possible. But with an innovation ecosystem, this would be a pitfall. Because as I said, there are two underlying problems or challenges in an innovation ecosystem. The dependency of the partners. The more partners there are involved, the higher the likelihood of one partner stepping out, failing or losing the faith in the ecosystem, which, as I said, might lead to a situation in which the ecosystem is failing as a whole. And the coordination effort. The more partners being involved, the higher the coordination effort. So what you need to do in order to build up an innovation ecosystem is to think really hard about what is the minimum viable value proposition that you can offer to your customer, that you can achieve with just few partners, maybe 3, 4, 5 partners. Then try to bring this value proposition to the market, show to your partners that you are a good orchestrator, that you're able to bring value propositions to the market, and then later on you can still scale the ecosystem and maybe even scale it to a platform ecosystem. But you need to think small and not think big. However, as I said, with a platform ecosystem, it is all about quick scaling. So I think this is also another example that really shows that you need to distinguish between these concepts and have a good understanding of the type of ecosystem that you need and that you would like to use in order to achieve the innovation or the market that you would like to achieve. This is also the end of my presentation, and I'm very happy and I'm looking forward to the panel discussion.
Thank you very much for this special information about ecosystems and how it works. It's a big picture, I think, what we can see, and I now changed in German. Ich denke, viele haben tatsächlich den Eindruck, dass es ohne Ökosysteme gar nicht funktioniert, was für neue Buildings oder für neue Firmengründungen und so weiter angeht. Denkst du, du sagst, Ökosysteme wären der zweite Schritt, oder? Wenn ich es richtig verstanden habe.
Nicht zwingend. Es gibt gewisse Branchen, und das sehen wir vor allem im Bereich Mobilität derzeit, auch zum Beispiel Insurance, Banking beginnt gerade, wo Ökosysteme sehr nötig werden, um sich zu differenzieren. Einfach weil es sehr schwer ist für Firmen, sich im Alleingang noch zu differenzieren. Und zum Beispiel im Versicherungskontext ist es sehr schwer, sich basierend auf einer Hausratsversicherung noch zu differenzieren. Der Schritt ist dann zu überlegen, was wäre eine innovative Hausratsversicherung, die ich vielleicht gar nicht alleine schaffen kann, wo ich aber neue Technologien, und da sind wir jetzt vielleicht bei Blockchain, nutzen kann, um ein Produkt zu schaffen, das ich alleine niemals schaffen könnte. Und genau dieser Differenzierungsfaktor, der ist natürlich dann entscheidend. Aber das ist eben auch der Punkt, weil Innovationsökosysteme so kompliziert sind zu erreichen, werde ich das nicht tun, wenn ich nicht muss. Und gerade Insurance, Banking, auch Mobilität sind die Branchen, wo ich gerade aufgrund technologischer Herausforderungen oder marktlicher Herausforderungen Ökosysteme vor allem brauche. Wohingegen andere Branchen, wo man sich immer noch differenzieren kann ohne Innovationsökosysteme, natürlich der sinnvollere Weg ist, so zu arbeiten wie vorher. Wenn ich immer noch differenzieren, immer noch wachsen, immer noch innovieren kann, warum dann Ökosystem aufbauen?
Okay. Erstmal vielen Dank an der Stelle. Ich will jetzt gar nicht weiter groß fragen, weil wir werden jetzt hier ganz kurz die Bühne umbauen. Und ich danke dir vielmals, dass du da bist. Das ist mir wirklich wichtig, weil die anderen Herren, die jetzt gleich noch dazu kommen, diese physische Präsenz ist halt doch was anderes. Wir haben es gerade eben schon davor gehabt, bevor du anfingst. Du hast viel mit Leuten, Menschen zu tun. Ich auch. Du arbeitest mit Studenten, ich mit Studenten und normalen Menschen, sage ich mal, die nicht studieren gerade oder das Leben studieren, je nachdem. Also sehr spannend. Und das ist, was wir hier gerade jetzt dann gleich auch sehen und transportieren, ist doch was anderes als so ein sterile Box, wo du davor sitzt und nicht wirklich was transportieren kannst. Das ist, deswegen vielen herzlichen Dank, dass du da bist.
Danke dir.